what really kickstarted the love affair that I currently have with investing in the stock market was after I graduated from college. I got my hands on my first book about money, and that was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. My dad handed it to me after I graduated, and I just immediately took to that book. I mean, I devoured it, and I read that in a few days, and then I reread it. From there, I read every book that he wrote, and then that led me on to other books. I learned about Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. I learned about the Motley Fool. I learned about Seth Klarman. And after thinking through the various ways that you can invest, I gave some thought to real estate. I learned quickly that's not for me. I gave my thought to owning a laundromat. Learned quickly that's not for me. And then I settled on, this whole stock market thing where I buy and I can sell from my house. I don't have to manage anything. The assets manage themselves. And if I can apply a long-term mindset to them and come up with some selection criteria, that style of investing really appealed to me. Now, the job that I had out of school was I was lucky enough to join a startup medical device company. The company was pre-FDA approval, running on venture capital funds, and this was back in 2004. Sheer luck on my part. That company is now worth more than $10 billion and publicly traded. So I got in the ground floor, sheer luck, with the company. But one thing that job did afford me to, I wasn't passionate about that job in per se. I was in sales for them, and I was in my car 30, 40 hours a week driving around. And I used all of that time to binge listen podcasts and audiobooks and listen to company conference calls and really learn everything that I could about money, personal finance, and investing. So I would say that kickstart my love affair was in 2004 from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which, by the way, is a book I don't completely agree with everything that they say now, but that was a gateway drug for kickstarting a love affair that I have with investing.
That was a bit of a gateway drug for me too. Just the way he presented the idea of creating an income stream. Maybe can you touch on that for somebody if they're happen to be tuning into a financial podcast for the first time, they stumbled on this one. What about income streams is so appealing, and why should people pay attention?
Yeah, that book was the first book that I ever read that introduced some very important concepts, some principles about money and really life that are just timeless. Some of them that I learned was everybody is in business for themselves. Like that one really hit home for me. Like I always thought your whole career was find a job with a stable company, grow within the ranks there, work for them for 40 years, and that's what you do. And when somebody said, no, you're actually in business for yourself. If you work for a company, then you just have one customer. And that customer is really your employer. And that concept is so simple, but it kind of like blew my mind. Another one was the rich think about money differently than everybody else. The rich make money and they think, how can I use this to buy an asset? How can I use this to increase my wealth? How can I start a business with this or buy a piece of real estate or whatever? How can I take the money that I have and grow it? A lot of other people are just naturally trained to be, okay, I have this money. How can I best consume it? Like, what can I buy? Can I go on a vacation? Can I buy a nicer house, a nicer car, whatever it is? So that was really important. The idea of that the rich use corporations and taxes differently, how tax law, like the very basics of tax law, the difference between an asset and a liability, building multiple income streams for themselves. Those were the really core principles that I took away from that book and really have tried to embody in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a question that kind of comes to my mind then, why do you think the financial education, especially among young people, is so lacking?
That's a really hard question to answer. I can say that I was taught nothing about money or investing in elementary school, middle school, high school, for sure. And I was taught very little about investing while I was in college. And I say that as someone that graduated with a business degree. Right. I mean, I remember a couple of times my professors offhandedly mentioned what like a dividend was in like the middle of a class. The class was on like healthcare management and he was talking about a dividend. I was like, that blows my mind. Companies pay you cash just for owning their stock. Like what? Can we explore more about this topic? No wonder why rich people like them. So that was like an accidental thing that happened in the class. But I was taught nothing about how a business works or the phases of a business or what the stock market is, why it goes up and down. I don't have a good answer then to that other than to say, I don't think a lot of teachers themselves are really fluent in money and finance because they themselves were not taught the principles. I know that some of them do teach around the curriculum and do a great job of educating people. But I just think that that's just, broadly speaking, a piece of education that is missing from the education system and missing from teacher education.